of Agroecology, Science and Practice, a course for the Masters in Agroecology. Once again, I am Dr. Tadeo Kahigwa, a lecturer at Mountains of the Moon University in the Faculty of Agriculture. In our last session, I had briefly mentioned some of the constraints to our current agricultural and farming systems. And I had made mention of some of the tools that can provide us with more information that is spot on regarding these different constraints. These parameters that have been documented in these different international databases will avail to the student data about population growth, food productivity, the food security situation from different areas, the nutrition situation of different countries, the gross domestic product, the average farm size in the different countries, the soils, the climatic conditions, and several others, so that we are able to categorize the different countries where they belong, and this will inform us of which interventions we should actually take to be able to enhance the capacities to feed and sustain the livelihoods in these different nations. For example, you will be able to see which countries are net food importers, and particularly which food crops, which income-oriented crops they are producing in the different countries. Now, these databases that I'm talking about include the Climate Change Knowledge Portal for development practitioners and policymakers. We have the new LOCLIM. You can follow on this link to be able to download these data sets. The new LOCLIM is going to especially give you the climate data for the different localities. When you click on a particular continent or country, it will be able to give you how much annual rainfall, can give you data for 10, 20 years, depending on how you would like to search from this database. Then we have the FAO stat, which is generally talking about the population, both the urban, the rural. It's talking about the amount of production for different crops, how much is imported, how much is exported, and several aspects that can actually inform an agroecologist on which actions need to be taken by a particular country. Then we have harmonized world soil database. Is also based on FAO data, and by following this link, you can be able to know what are the soil types in Uganda, for example, and by knowing that, we know which interventions, which agroecological practices should be applied so that we can improve the productivity and the ability of these soils to feed both current and future generations. So here, particularly to the students pursuing the Masters in Agroecology, I would like you to look into these databases, and the information you will generate from there, looking at a particular country of your choice. You would look at how to minimize the current constraints that are affecting these farming systems and make a presentation of your findings and your recommendations. In the beginning, we talked about case studies. So besides looking at these databases, we would also like to use a case study approach where the students can be able to recommend and apply practical solutions to the real situations, particularly in the Rwenzori region. So a case study is a holistic inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon within its natural setting, according to Harling in 2012. And this approach of case study enables students to acquire knowledge through an in-depth analysis of an issue and to accumulate skills and real-life experiences of farming systems. It brings field into the classroom, yes, a valuable supplement to the theory and knowledge that is normally taught in classical disciplines. The case brings a degree of real-world relevance to the subject matter and allows students to work with their current knowledge to seek a solution to a specific challenge. It enables students to deal with the real-world situations that provide the basis for stimulating discussions and assignments. So, with this case study learning, it's very typical of agroecology that we are able to interact with the real world, with the farming community, with real situations on the farms, such that we can actually provide practical solutions. So we will suggest some farms on which we can make these case studies, but also the databases that I have described earlier on can be a source of inspiration for case study. We could take a case of a country that has advanced in, for example, organic farming. Unfortunately, Uganda is among the countries that are on the forefront of organic farming in the sense of production, but also in the sense of exporting organic certified products. So with such a case, we can look at maybe projects that have been implemented in line with agroecology and be able to transfer some of that knowledge into practice to the Rwenzori region. Now, we have been talking about agroecology as a science, a practice, and a social movement. We have talked about some of the practices that define agroecology, and many are not new, but within these practices, new discoveries can be made that would actually make these practices more sustainable and more fulfilling in the aspect of sustainability, where we talk about the economic sustainability, ecological sustainability, and social sustainability as a whole and working together. So if we have a practice such as integrated pest management.
This is not new.
This is not rocket science. This is not from Mars. It is something that has existed but has several definitions of different aspects in conventional agriculture, for organic agriculture, for permaculture. Integrated pest management has different definitions. But how about for agroecology? So we have here 10 key elements described by the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, that will help us to contextualize the practices, the science, and the social movement. And that with these elements, we are then able to look at a practice which, even when it can actually belong to permaculture, but it has to subscribe to these elements for it to be able to be in the category of agroecology. And these elements, the 10 elements, are broadly categorized into the common characteristics of agroecological systems, foundational practices and innovation approaches. That is one category. We have the context features of farming systems, and also other elements belong to the enabling environment category. Now, under common characteristics of agroecological systems, foundations, practices, and innovation approaches, we have the elements such as diversity, synergies, efficiency, resilience, recycling, co-creation, and sharing of knowledge. And then, under context features, we have the human and social values, we have the culture and food nutrition, and under enabling environment, we have responsible governance and circular and solidarity economy. Now, when we go to the common characteristics of agroecological systems, foundations, practices, and innovation approaches as a category, when we talk about diversity, this is the element that will call us to ensure on a particular farm we avoid relying on one particular enterprise. We diversify such that the interactions, the total sum that I was talking about earlier on, the more diverse a farm is, the more interactions are happening on the farm, and therefore the more resilient the farm becomes in both, especially ecological terms. Then synergies, we look at the working together of the different elements. Efficiency, we are talking about smaller input that is producing more. So when we use a particular input that is of course on the farm, it should be able to produce more than the input. If we, for example, plant 1 kilogram of beans, then we should be able to get 30 kilograms of beans. Resilience is connecting, of course, with these other elements of diversity, synergies, and efficiency, that when you have more on the farm, the crops benefiting from the animals, then you have an efficient system. And also, if there is any issue, for example, disruption of the livestock, then at least you have crops to back you up, and economically you are resilient. But also, ecological resilience is in terms of some enterprises acting as biological control measures, for example, for some pests, and therefore the farm becoming resilient to attacks of different pests and diseases. Recycling is where we are talking about the output of one enterprise being input for another enterprise. Co-creation and sharing knowledge is very key when we are talking about agroecology as a science. Then we are generating knowledge by working together, integrating the lived experiences of the farmers as their form of indigenous knowledge into science, and therefore being able to create solutions. So this category of elements of agroecology is very key, and it is composed of the elements that will define both the practices, the science, and the movement aspect of agroecology. Then we look always at contextualized solutions. So we look at the human and the social values, and this will affect the adoption of the practices that we have talked about in category 1. The culture and food traditions of the people, very key. When we are making a new variety of particular crop or producing a new livestock breed, we have to look into the culture and food traditions of the people if this particular innovation will actually be adopted. And this is how agroecology is addressing some of the failures of previous agricultural systems. Then the enabling environment, we are looking at the governance and the circular and solidarity economy, that for sustainability, we do not have to have resources allocated to one top of the end, and then we forget about the majority of the farmers. So have a meaningful price for a product such that the producer is encouraged to continue in the production. So with these elements, we find that agroecology sets itself apart from other farming and production systems, and therefore even when we are talking about a system that might be similar to others like conventional agriculture, but agroecology will put into perspective these elements which will ensure the sustainability, both ecological, economic, and social sustainability. Thank you for being part of this third session for our course on agroecology, science and practice. I look forward to having you in our next session.